There's a hidden force threading through the fabric of reality, something that operates not within the bounds of time and space, but beyond them. It's not a theory born from mysticism or speculation. It's one of the most rigorously tested, perplexing, and undeniably real phenomena in the entire realm of quantum physics. It's called quantum entanglement, and it's rewriting everything we thought we knew about connection, causality, and consciousness. This is not just science for scientists. Quantum entanglement reaches far beyond laboratories and chalkboard equations. It's the gateway to understanding how the universe communicates with itself. It whispers of a cosmic intelligence where separation is an illusion and the deepest truths are entangled, not isolated. In the strange world of the quantum, two particles can become mysteriously linked, so much so that one responds instantly to changes in the other, no matter how far apart they are. Einstein famously referred to it as spooky action at a distance, and even he was unnerved by its implications. How could two particles, once connected, defy the speed of light and maintain an invisible tether across galaxies? How could the universe allow for such an outrageous violation of locality? And yet, the evidence is undeniable. Entanglement is no longer just a theoretical curiosity. It's been experimentally verified time and time again. But what we're beginning to uncover is far more shocking. This isn't just about subatomic particles. It's about reality itself. It's about the matrix that holds existence together, where the ordinary laws of cause and effect begin to crumble. And the most provocative question of all, could this quantum connection extend beyond the material world? Could it reach into the realm of consciousness? In today's video, we're going to peel back the layers of the known universe and examine the quantum mystery of connection. You'll see how quantum entanglement challenges everything, from our understanding of space and time to the very nature of individuality. We'll explore its role in shaping the world around us, its eerie implications for how reality functions, and how this phenomenon may even hold the key to understanding intuition, synchronicity, and consciousness itself. The road ahead is filled with paradoxes. Things will get weird, but by the end of this journey, you'll have glimpsed a universe that is far more interconnected, intelligent, and alive than mainstream science has ever dared to admit. Let's begin with the phenomenon that started it all: the quantum mystery of connection. In the subatomic world, rules break down, certainties vanish, and phenomena emerge that don't just bend the laws of physics, they shatter them. Quantum entanglement is one of those phenomena. At its core, entanglement describes a peculiar property of quantum systems. When two or more particles become entangled, their states are no longer independent. Instead, they form a single, unified system even when separated by vast distances. If you measure one, you instantly know the state of the other, regardless of how far apart they are. It's as if space and time no longer matter. To grasp how bizarre this truly is, consider this: light years could separate two entangled particles, and yet an action on one would still affect the other immediately. Not quickly, not at the speed of light, instantly. This alone defies the classical understanding of causality, where information must travel through space over time. In the entangled realm, distance is irrelevant. Something deeper, stranger, and more fundamental is at play. Now, let's break down the quantum process. Entanglement typically occurs when particles interact in certain ways, for instance, during particle collisions or energy exchanges. Once entangled, their quantum states become intertwined. Measure the spin, polarization, or momentum of one, and the other state is immediately determined. But this is not mere correlation. It's not about one particle simply knowing what the other is doing. The two particles are, in a profound sense, still part of the same whole. It's a non-local connection, a unification of states across all distance and time. This non-locality puzzled Einstein deeply. He believed in a deterministic universe, one in which every effect had a local cause. But entanglement mocked this worldview. He tried to dismiss it, proposing that some hidden variable must explain it. But time and again, experiments proved otherwise. There were no hidden variables. Entanglement was real, and it was stranger than fiction. One of the most famous validations came through what's known as Bell's theorem. John Bell devised a mathematical inequality to test whether hidden variables could account for quantum predictions. If quantum mechanics was incomplete, then Bell's inequality would hold. But if entanglement was truly non-local, the inequality would be violated. Guess what happened? Experiments around the world have repeatedly violated Bell's inequality, confirming that the quantum world doesn't obey classical expectations. The entangled connection is real, and it cannot be explained by signals traveling through space. So what does this mean for the world we live in? First, it means that at the deepest level of nature, everything is connected. Separation is an illusion generated by our limited perception. While we may see objects as distinct and distant, quantum mechanics tells a different story. Beneath the surface, there's an invisible matrix of entangled relationships holding everything together. This concept isn't confined to the lab. Entanglement is fundamental to the structure of atoms and molecules. It plays a role in the behavior of photons in fiber optic cables. It's the basis of emerging technologies like quantum computing and quantum encryption. Without entanglement, these wouldn't be possible. In fact, every object you interact with, your phone, your body, the air around you, is composed of quantum systems in constant interplay. The entanglement between particles may be subtle, but it's ever-present. And while the effects may cancel out at macroscopic scales, the entangled fabric still underlies everything. This hints at a profound possibility that reality itself is not built from isolated building blocks, but from a web of relationships. That what we experience as separate things are simply manifestations of a deeper unity, entangled expressions of a greater whole. There's another layer to this. Entanglement also challenges our understanding of time. If entangled particles are connected beyond space, are they also connected beyond time? Could an action in the present influence an entangled counterpart in the past? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that time may be more fluid than we think, and that entanglement can operate across temporal boundaries. This leads us to a staggering idea. Perhaps time, like space, is an emergent phenomenon, not fundamental but secondary to a deeper order of connection. In this order, the universe is not a sequence of events unfolding linearly, but a holistic system in which everything happens all at once, in a grand entangled now. And if that's true, then the implications for consciousness, memory, and even fate are enormous. But we'll come back to that soon. For now, let's sit with the strangeness. Two particles, born together in an event billions of years ago, may still be linked, still dancing in harmony across the galaxy. No signal passes between them, no medium carries the information, yet, somehow, they remain part of a single system, a single wave function stretched across the cosmos. Quantum mechanics doesn't tell us why this happens. It only describes how. The equations work. The experiments confirm it. But the deeper meaning, the metaphysical implications, remain a mystery. What's clear is that quantum entanglement forces us to question the fundamental nature of reality. Is the world truly made of separate things? Or are all things just ripples in one vast field of interconnected being? The old paradigm told us that the universe is like a machine, predictable, local, and linear. But entanglement reveals a universe that is relational, non-local, and deeply mysterious. A universe where the whole is more than the sum of its parts. A universe where distance and separation are illusions, and where connection is the default state. And maybe, just maybe, this understanding isn't limited to particles. Because if the material world is bound together by this hidden thread, what does that say about the immaterial? What does that say about thought, emotion, awareness? Could consciousness itself be part of the same entangled matrix? We're about to enter a space where science meets speculation, and physics begins to speak the language of spirit. In the next part, we'll explore how entanglement may extend beyond the physical, and what it means for communication, causality, and the boundaries of the self. The journey is only just beginning. What happens when the laws of nature stop behaving like laws and start behaving like riddles? Quantum entanglement doesn't just stretch across space. It pushes into the very structure of reality. It erodes the foundation of cause and effect, and with it, the assumptions that have quietly shaped the way we understand everything from motion to memory. The implications are staggering, because once you remove locality from the equation, once you accept that one thing can affect another without any signal or force passing between them, then you've torn a hole in the traditional model of physical existence. Let's begin at the root: causality. Classical physics is built on the principle that causes lead to effects. A billiard ball strikes another, and it moves. A light switch flips, and the bulb turns on. Time flows forward, events unfold in sequence, and outcomes follow from actions. This principle gave rise to centuries of scientific thought and technological development. But quantum entanglement suggests something else entirely. When two particles are entangled, a measurement on one determines the outcome of the other, instantly regardless of distance. There is no time for a signal to travel, no chain of events, no observable transmission of information. The effect appears without a local cause. It's not that causality is reversed. It's that causality, as we know it, no longer applies in the same way. This kind of interaction implies a deeper layer of order, a kind of non-local orchestration where events are coordinated, not through space-time, but through some invisible connective field. Some physicists refer to this as quantum holism. The parts are not truly parts, they are inseparable aspects of a whole. And that whole is not confined by the boundaries of time, space, or even substance. From this perspective, the universe is not a machine but a system of relationships. The fundamental unit is not a particle but an interaction, connection. This is where the implications get even more extraordinary. Because if quantum entanglement points to a reality where connection is fundamental, then what we think of as communication may be due for a radical upgrade. Consider this: what if information doesn't need to travel at all? What if, instead of sending and receiving, the universe is already synchronized at a deeper level, so deeply entangled that when one part shifts, the other simply reflects the change without any transmission? This idea opens the door to new kinds of technology. Quantum communication, for example, is not just theoretical anymore. Scientists are already building systems that rely on entanglement to transmit data in ways that are effectively immune to interception. The reason? Because observing an entangled system alters its state. In other words, you can't spy on it without revealing your presence. Now apply that to the larger frame. What if we've only scratched the surface of what quantum entanglement can do? Quantum teleportation is another phenomenon built on this principle. It's not the movement of physical matter from one place to another, but the transfer of quantum information, the precise state of a particle between two entangled partners. Experiments have successfully demonstrated this across distances of over 1,000 kilometers, through satellites orbiting the Earth. The implications are breathtaking, and yet, none of this seems to violate the speed limit of the universe, because nothing is actually moving in the conventional sense. Entangled systems are not sending signals. They are expressing the same state simultaneously. The act of observation here is not local, it is global, holistic. But this is still only half the story, because entanglement doesn't just challenge physical constraints, it begins to unravel the very idea of separation. And when you take that seriously, the wall between physical and non-physical starts to crumble. Could the mind participate in this entangled order? Could thoughts, intentions, or states of consciousness operate non-locally, just like quantum particles? This possibility has stirred debate for decades. Some researchers propose that consciousness itself might be a quantum phenomenon. If so, it would not be confined to the brain or bound by classical causality. It might be capable of entanglement in its own right, not metaphorically but literally. Now pause here and consider what that would mean. If consciousness can operate non-locally, then the moments we call intuition, synchronicity, or shared awareness may not be coincidences at all. They may be expressions of a deeper connectivity, one that links minds across space and time, just as entangled particles are linked. You think of someone and they call you. You sense a shift in the room without any physical cue. You feel connected to another person's emotional state without exchanging words. These experiences defy explanation within a strictly materialist model, but they begin to make sense in a world where information is already entangled, already shared, already unified. And if this holds true, the implications extend far beyond communication. It means memory, intention, and even identity may function on levels we've barely begun to explore. Let's bring this into sharper focus. In quantum computation, entanglement allows for processes that are exponentially more powerful than anything a classical computer can perform. Why? Because the entangled states allow for parallel realities to be processed simultaneously. Rather than following a linear chain of commands, a quantum system can evaluate multiple outcomes at once, because it exists in multiple states at once. Now shift that model to the human experience. What if our consciousness isn't linear either? What if we're already receiving inputs from multiple realities, multiple versions of now, and what we call choice or intuition is simply the resonance of one potential timeline collapsing into focus? This isn't fantasy. It's the natural extension of what quantum systems already do. And if the substrate of reality operates this way, then it's not just subatomic particles that are entangled, it's the very process of awareness itself. But of course, the moment we begin asking questions like this, we enter contested terrain. The standard scientific model is deeply wary of applying quantum principles to consciousness. And understandably so. The brain is not a subatomic particle. It's a complex biological structure with multiple layers of function. And yet, complexity doesn't negate quantum behavior. In fact, some biological systems already show signs of quantum effects. Photosynthesis, bird navigation, even the human sense of smell, all show evidence that quantum coherence plays a role. Which leads to a bold but increasingly serious question. Could the brain, or consciousness more broadly, be a quantum processor? Could it entangle with external systems, not just metaphorically but literally? We don't yet have definitive answers, but the fact that we're asking these questions at all signals a profound shift. The lines are blurring. The physical and the mental, the objective and the subjective, the inside and the outside, these dualities are giving way to a new vision of reality. One where entanglement is not an exception but the rule. Where individuality is nested within relationship. Where consciousness may not be a byproduct of matter, but an active participant in the dance of creation. And this brings us full circle. Quantum entanglement began as a fringe idea, an unproven quirk that baffled even the great minds of the 20th century. Today, it stands at the heart of modern physics. But its real power may lie not in technology, but in transformation. In how it forces us to see ourselves, our minds, and our universe differently. The classical world was built on separateness. Object and observer, cause and effect, past and future. But entanglement is drawing a new map, one in which those distinctions dissolve, and what remains is relationship, interconnection, unity. In the next part of this journey, we'll turn directly toward that relationship between entanglement and consciousness, not as a metaphor, but as a literal bridge between the known and the unknown. Could this be the key to understanding shared experiences, intuition, even the survival of awareness beyond the physical body? Prepare to enter territory where science meets the sacred, and the hidden potential of mind begins to reveal itself. When two minds feel the same thing at the same time, without exchanging words, without exchanging glances, what mechanism lies behind that resonance? This question has haunted thinkers across centuries. But only now, through the strange mirror of quantum entanglement, are we beginning to glimpse a possible answer. A bridge is being revealed. Not just between particles, but between people, between consciousnesses, between states of awareness once thought separate, isolated, and bound to the individual. But what if that isolation was never real? start with the most uncanny phenomena: shared thoughts, spontaneous synchronicities, the sudden sense that someone, somewhere, is thinking of you. These moments have often been dismissed as coincidence or poetic embellishment. But a new model is emerging, one that doesn't rely on the transmission of information in the classical sense. Instead, it relies on something deeper: instantaneous resonance across a non-local field. Entangled particles do not send signals. They reflect one another. They mirror a state regardless of separation. Could consciousness mirror in the same way? Could two minds, under certain conditions, become entangled, not through language or physical proximity, but through a shared state of intention, emotion, or awareness? Some experiments suggest it might be so. In controlled environments, researchers have observed statistically significant correlations between the brain activity of individuals placed in separate rooms, with no means of conventional communication. These correlations appear to spike when one individual is exposed to a stimulus, while the other, isolated, exhibits a corresponding brain pattern. Skeptics dismiss these results as anomalies, yet they persist. And if even a fraction of them hold true, they imply something stunning: that consciousness, like quantum particles, can become entangled. That minds can reflect each other's states in real time, not through signal or message, but through entangled coherence. Now expand that framework. What if this connection isn't limited to isolated cases? What if consciousness is inherently non-local, and individual awareness is simply a focal point in a broader field? This is where the boundary between physics and metaphysics begins to dissolve. Ancient traditions across cultures have long described something akin to a collective mind, a universal intelligence, or an interconnected web of awareness. In modern language, we call this the field of consciousness. And in the quantum world, a similar idea is taking shape, one where entangled systems transcend the space that separates them. It's not just that two particles are linked. It's that their distinction is, in some way, an illusion. The same could be true of minds. Separate bodies, yes, but one field. One awareness expressing itself through different vantage points. Think of consciousness not as a product of the brain, but as something like a signal. The brain is the receiver, but the signal itself? That may exist beyond space and time. That may be entangled with other signals, with other receivers. And when conditions align, when frequencies match, a sudden alignment occurs. A knowing, a shared experience, an intuitive leap that bypasses logic, language, and the five senses. This shift in perspective challenges everything we think we know about the mind. It suggests that your thoughts may not be confined to your skull, that your feelings may not be purely internal, that your sense of self may extend farther, infinitely farther, than the limits of your body. Here is where quantum entanglement becomes more than a scientific curiosity. It becomes a revelation. If the physical world exhibits non-local connectivity, and if consciousness participates in that same world, then separation becomes a story we tell ourselves, not a fact. And the experience of unity, of oneness, is not mystical escapism. It is the natural perception of a deeper truth. Let's push this further. Many people report the experience of knowing something before it happens, not logically but intuitively. Premonitions, gut feelings, flashes of insight. These experiences often appear nonsensical through a materialist lens. But if time itself is not linear at the quantum level, if cause and effect can bend or dissolve altogether, then consciousness may touch information from the future, not because it travels through time, but because it exists outside of time. Entangled systems don't just operate across space. They appear to bypass time entirely. A measurement in the present can influence outcomes in the past. Retrocausality, a strange word for a stranger phenomenon, but it's been verified under certain quantum models. And if matter can reflect backward through time, then perhaps mind can too. Now the intuitive becomes plausible. Now the knowing before knowing takes on a different light. Because if your consciousness is entangled with events, people, or moments outside the usual temporal sequence, then intuition is not magic. It is memory of a future already unfolding in a different order. It's not that you saw what was coming. It's that part of you was already there. This is the frontier where the material collapses into the mystical, not through belief, but through direct correlation. Entanglement suggests not only that consciousness can be connected across space, but that it may operate on a continuum that includes all moments at once. That awareness may be quantum in structure, and therefore capable of coherence beyond the ordinary. And now we come to the most radical implication of all. What if death is not the end of consciousness? If the mind is a byproduct of the brain, then consciousness should cease when the body dies. But if the mind is a function of a non-local quantum field, then it may not be limited by the body's condition. The brain may simply be a filter, a lens through which the field expresses itself. Remove the lens and the field remains. This view aligns with reports of near-death experiences, shared death experiences, and countless mystical encounters across cultures. But now we are no longer forced to place these accounts in the realm of metaphor. If consciousness is entangled with a broader quantum field, then its continuity becomes not only possible but probable. Entanglement in this context is not a feature of subatomic particles. It is the architecture of existence itself, a blueprint that shows how all things, matter, mind, memory, are woven together beyond the appearance of division. It suggests that you are already more than one point of view, that your awareness is already linked, subtly and silently, to everything else that is aware. This is not wishful thinking. It is a model supported by emerging data, coherent with the structure of the universe at its most fundamental level. And it gives rise to an extraordinary possibility. If consciousness is entangled across space and time, then we are never truly alone. Every thought echoes across the field. Every intention resonates. Every experience is shared on some level with the rest of the quantum fabric. This changes everything. It changes how we relate to others, because their inner world is not separate from ours. It changes how we treat the planet, because the Earth itself may be a node in this conscious network. It changes how we see ourselves, not as isolated identities, but as unique expressions of a single, entangled awareness exploring itself in infinite forms. The boundaries that once defined the self, body, time, identity begin to dissolve. And in their place, a new image emerges. A consciousness that is plural, timeless, and woven through the very geometry of reality. In ancient texts, this was called the cosmic mind, the akasha, the universal soul. Today, it wears the language of quantum fields and non-local correlations. But the meaning is the same. Beneath the veil of separation lies unity, not as a metaphor, not as an ideal, but as a measurable, testable truth. We have seen how entanglement challenges the structure of causality and reshapes communication. But here, in the realm of consciousness, it offers something even greater, the end of the illusion of isolation. What remains is a mystery, yes, but one that invites not confusion, but reverence. Because if you are entangled with all that is, then every breath is a signal, every thought is a thread, every moment is a portal into the infinite now. In the next part of this unfolding journey, we'll trace how these revelations point toward technological transformation, the ethics of exploring entangled systems, and what it might mean to build tools that operate not just through physical power but through conscious intention. There is a point in every paradigm shift where the implications become more provocative than the theory itself. Quantum entanglement began as a mathematical quirk, something Einstein once called spooky action at a distance. But as the phenomenon has been studied, replicated, and confirmed, it has begun to reveal more than just quantum weirdness. It's revealing the very architecture of a new reality, one where the boundaries between mind, matter, and meaning start to dissolve. And now we stand at the edge of the next inquiry. What does this actually mean for us? Not just as thinkers or scientists, but as beings embedded in this strange, interwoven cosmos. The implications are no longer abstract. They are immediate, disruptive, and transformational. First, there's the question of consciousness itself. If entanglement reflects a deeper, non-local connectivity between all things, then our understanding of awareness must evolve accordingly. Consciousness can no longer be seen as a passive observer of a physical world. It begins to look more like an active participant in shaping that world. This is more than philosophy. It touches the core of what it means to perceive, to intend, and to influence. There are models now suggesting that consciousness may collapse quantum wave functions, not as a metaphor, but as a literal interaction with the field of probability that underlies material form. That which is observed comes into being. That which is intended shifts into alignment. Under such a model, awareness itself becomes a creative force, collapsing potentiality into reality through a deeply mysterious process of entangled observation. This moves us away from a mechanistic universe governed solely by external laws, and towards something stranger and more participatory. A cosmos in which mind and matter are two aspects of a singular entangled system. And from this new vantage point, a question emerges: what technologies can we create when we understand this? Quantum computing is one of the most visible and practical results of entanglement research. These devices don't simply process information faster, they process it differently. Through entanglement, they can hold superpositions of states, calculating not one answer at a time, but an array of possibilities simultaneously. It's not just speed, it's dimensionality, a way of interacting with information that mimics the layered, probabilistic nature of reality itself. And this is just the beginning. Some researchers are exploring quantum communication channels, entangled systems that could allow messages to be transmitted instantly across vast distances. Unlike traditional signals, which travel through space and are bound by the speed of light, quantum communication operates through correlated states, not transmission. This would redefine our understanding of connection. It would revolutionize cryptography, data security, and even the infrastructure of global networks. But beyond machines, another frontier is emerging: the fusion of entanglement and intention. If thought is entangled with reality at some level, then it's possible to envision technologies that don't just respond to mental commands, but are powered by them. Systems that are activated by coherence of mind, devices that interface with the quantum field through conscious alignment rather than mechanical control. This might sound like science fiction, but the foundational elements are already appearing. Brain-computer interfaces, neurofeedback systems, and subtle energy technologies are beginning to hint at a future where the interface between self and system becomes increasingly invisible. Thought, emotion, and subtle shifts in awareness could soon become legitimate inputs for advanced systems. Yet for all this potential, a deeper challenge arises: ethics. Because entanglement doesn't just open new doors, it tears down old boundaries. If all systems are connected, then every action becomes a global one. There is no isolated intent, no truly private decision. The field reflects, the field resonates, and that means the moral weight of each thought and gesture becomes heavier, more significant. In a world shaped by entanglement, responsibility becomes collective. Accountability is no longer confined to visible consequences. We begin to see how the unseen intention, belief, state of mind plays a role in the whole. And this demands a radical new framework for ethics. For example, if consciousness influences the quantum field, then how should we regulate technologies that amplify thought? If entangled systems can transmit states rather than signals, then what safeguards must be placed around emotional coherence? These are not questions for the future. They are already here, emerging on the horizon of research and innovation. And they're not just technological, they're spiritual. Because entanglement does something that few scientific ideas ever do: it resacralizes reality. It tells us that everything is part of a shared field, that no event is truly isolated, that no person is ever completely alone. It returns mystery to the material world and meaning to the physical one. This is the rebirth of the participatory universe. It means that your thoughts matter not just subjectively but structurally. It means that your emotional coherence is not just a personal achievement, but a form of alignment with the deeper order of things. It means that healing at the individual or collective level might be less about fixing broken parts and more about restoring coherence across entangled systems. This new lens invites us to rethink medicine, psychology, education, and community. It suggests that the key to transformation lies not just in action, but in attunement to the field, to one another, to the resonant patterns that link us beyond words or touch. And now we must consider the most sweeping implication of all, what this means for our understanding of the universe itself. Entanglement is not just a property of particles. It's beginning to look like a fundamental characteristic of reality, a hidden symmetry beneath all motion, a pattern of instant correlation embedded in the very space-time fabric. And that means the cosmos is not a machine, not a collection of isolated events, but a living matrix, a field of infinite relationships reflecting each other across time and distance. This alters cosmology. This reframes ontology. It means that the so-called vacuum of space is not empty, but densely woven with connection. That distance is not separation. That time is not a wall. That identity is not a fixed point, but a momentary expression of a deeper, entangled self. In this light, human beings are not observers of the universe. We are nodes in its unfolding network, holographic fragments of a totality expressing itself through form and experience. And that means our potential cognitively, spiritually, ethically is far beyond what the old models allowed. We are not separate minds in a meaningless void. We are participants in a resonant field of intelligence that is experimenting with form, evolution, and awareness through us. This understanding doesn't call for control. It calls for humility, because entanglement tells us that every act is echoed. Every intention ripples. Every thought shapes a thread in the fabric of the real. And that brings us to a moment of choice. What kind of field do we want to create? What kind of resonance will we contribute to? What kind of world is possible when we realize that every point of awareness is part of one infinite, intelligent whole? The implications of entanglement are not merely intellectual. They are existential. They compel us to reawaken to the deeper laws of the cosmos, not rules imposed from above, but harmonies waiting to be felt, heard, and aligned with. In the final part of this exploration, we'll take the full weight of what's been revealed and turn it toward a new way of seeing the universe, not as a machine, but as a multidimensional web of meaning, vibration, and infinite potential. Something profound happens when the mind finally accepts that the universe is not built on separation, but on entanglement. The very act of recognizing this transforms the way we relate to everything, from atoms to ideas, from people to planets. What once seemed solid and solitary begins to shimmer with unseen threads of connection. Every interaction becomes part of a vast orchestration. Every moment echoes with an invisible chorus. The paradigm is no longer one of isolation and division. It is one of unity, resonance, and intelligent design. This isn't abstract theory. It's a total reframing of what it means to exist. Start with space. The classical view tells us that distance separates objects, that location defines the limits of interaction. But quantum entanglement defies this entirely. It tells us that space is not a barrier. Two entangled particles, no matter how far apart, act as if they are still part of a unified system. That means something essential. Space is not separation. It's structure within unity, a fabric that connects rather than divides. And then there's time. For centuries, time has been treated as a linear path, a sequence of moments laid out one after the other. But entanglement introduces a new possibility: simultaneity beyond chronology. The instant one entangled particle is measured, the other reflects that state without delay. No signal travels, and yet the correlation happens. This implies that cause and effect might not be confined to linear flow. That past, present and future are not fixed rails, but fluid relationships. In this new paradigm, time becomes less of a ticking clock and more of a dimension of alignment. It bends, stretches, and folds based on coherence, intention, and resonance. It is not indifferent. It is participatory. So what does this make of matter itself? In the traditional framework, matter is primary and consciousness is emergent. Physical structures give rise to awareness through complexity. But the entangled paradigm flips this upside down. It whispers that consciousness may be fundamental, and matter an expression of its structure. Under this lens, atoms are not building blocks, they're standing waves in a conscious field. Physical forms are not containers of awareness, they're patterns of awareness, made visible through resonance. This is the birth of a new cosmology. One where the universe is not a lifeless expanse punctuated by random events, but a living matrix of intelligence expressing itself through every quantum interaction. And that intelligence is not something you observe from the outside. It's something you're part of, always have been. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every intention you hold ripples through this matrix. And the field responds, not metaphorically but literally. Entanglement shows us that what happens here influences what happens there, not through force, but through correlation of state, through alignment of potential. This realization is not just empowering, it's also humbling, because it means the universe is listening. It means the thoughts you entertain, the energy you embody, the coherence of your inner world, all of it contributes to the vibrational signature of the whole. You're not just living in the field. You are shaping it. That's not a metaphor. That's physics emerging into philosophy. Now, imagine how this changes everything, from how we educate to how we heal, from how we relate to how we govern. A society built on separateness breeds competition, scarcity, and conflict. But a civilization rooted in entanglement would reflect unity, synergy, and shared potential. In education, this shift would mean more than transmitting information. It would become a process of awakening each individual's unique resonance within the whole. Learning would not just be about absorbing facts, but about aligning with purpose, tapping into insight, and cultivating coherence with universal intelligence. In medicine, health would no longer be viewed as the absence of disease, but as resonant balance within the field. Treatment wouldn't just address symptoms, but would restore coherence, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. Healing modalities would evolve to honor intention, frequency, and the entangled relationship between mind and body. And in relationships, whether personal or planetary, the entangled paradigm offers a radically new perspective. It tells us that connection is not something we achieve, it's something we remember, something we uncover beneath the illusion of separation. When you look into the eyes of another, you're not seeing a different being, you're recognizing another node of the same infinite self looking back. Conflict becomes harder to sustain when you know the field reflects your own vibration. Violence becomes illogical when you see the same spark of awareness animating all forms. Division becomes obsolete when every other is also you, expressed from a different angle. This paradigm is not utopian. It's structural. It's not built on hope. It's built on understanding. And it requires not just knowledge, but transformation. Because the entangled universe doesn't just change what you know. It changes who you are. It requires the ego to loosen its grip. It invites the mind to quiet its chatter. It calls the heart into alignment with a larger harmony. And it teaches you to trust something deeper than logic, the direct knowing that you are always connected, always part of the field, always participating in the unfolding of reality. This is where science meets mysticism, not through compromise, but through convergence. Because for centuries, ancient traditions have whispered truths that quantum physics is now uncovering. That all is one, that time is illusion, that consciousness creates reality, that intention shapes experience. These are not fantasies. They are now becoming measurable phenomena. And in that convergence lies the possibility for something extraordinary, a unified science of consciousness and cosmos, a new metaphysics grounded in quantum principles, a new worldview that honors both reason and revelation, both logic and intuition. It's not about abandoning the scientific method. It's about expanding it beyond materialism, beyond reductionism, into a holographic understanding of reality. A reality where the smallest particle reflects the whole, where the inner world is not separate from the outer world, but a mirror of it, where consciousness is not an epiphenomenon, but the root from which all phenomena arise. And here is the most radical implication of all. You are not here to observe the universe. You are here to participate in its awakening. Your life is not random. Your choices are not meaningless. Your consciousness is not passive. You are part of the self-aware field learning to recognize itself. Every moment of insight, every act of love, every realization of truth sends ripples through the network. You are a node of coherence, a point of intelligence, a fractal of the whole. And the more you remember this, the more the universe reflects it back to you. You begin to notice synchronicities. You feel the subtle alignment of events. You sense the presence of the field in your thoughts, your dreams, your impulses. Life becomes not a struggle for survival, but a dance of participation. A sacred play of awareness becoming aware. This is the new paradigm. It's not just a theory. It's an invitation to live in resonance with the deeper order, to think, feel, act, and create from the knowing that everything is connected, not conceptually but fundamentally. This is the age of quantum consciousness, the era where science and soul are no longer at odds, but reflections of the same underlying field. And you are standing at the threshold. What will you bring into coherence? What vibration will you contribute? What reality will you help collapse from the field of infinite potential? The answers are not out there. They're entangled within you, always have been, always will be.